All right, well, welcome to Intro to Ask Data in Tableau. My name is Samantha, and I'm an engineering manager on the Ask Data team at Tableau.
And my name is Ruhab Marcus. I'm the senior product manager on the Ask Data team.
And we're super excited we can finally talk about Ask Data and tell you guys all about what Ask Data is about. Thank you.
And we know this is the last session, and this is what's keeping between you and happy hour. So we promise it'll be fun, and you'll get out at 5 and be able to enjoy the rest of the night.
How's this? OK, no crazy buzzing. All right. So now that you know who we are, we'd like to get to know a little bit about who we have sitting in the audience today. So how many of you are new to Tableau? Cool.
Awesome.
How many of you would consider yourself to be casual business users who might be consuming data using dashboards that are built by other people? This is still buzzing, isn't it? OK. And how many of you are data analysts? The majority. Cool. And how many of you are server admins? Sweet.
Nice.
Welcome. Well, welcome, everybody. So let's kick things off with an example about what we mean by natural language capabilities. Hey, Ruhab, how are recent sales for chairs doing in Cali?
They're doing pretty well, Samantha. We sold 100 chairs and made $1 million in revenue. These are really legit chairs.
Well, that's fantastic. So as you can see, this was a very natural interaction between Ruhab and I. And that's because our brain is really good at using common sense to infer ambiguous terms like recent. It's also really good at filling in missing information. For example, chairs in this case is really referring to subcategory of product, and Cali is really referring to the state of California. So we want to enable you to have this natural experience when you're interacting with data in Tableau. So we have a lot of content to cover with you today. First, we'd like to tell you a little bit about why we're investing in natural language and how that fits into the broader Tableau vision for smart analytics. Then, through a lot of really cool demos, we'd like to show you how easy it is to get started with Ask Data, the types of analysis that you can do, either it's ad hoc, something quick, or full analytical workflows. And towards the end, we'll also share with you some tips on how you can get the most out of the natural language experience. So we definitely welcome any questions you have along the way, so don't feel shy. Definitely put up your hands and just pause us if you have questions. Cool? All right, so let's first take a step back and see how we began this journey.
So our mission at Tableau has always been to help people see and understand data. Can anyone guess what the most important word in that mission is? Yeah, I kind of cheated and bolded it, so. But you may think it's data, but it's actually people. I remember I was asked this question when I onboarded Tableau, and I screamed, data. And quickly I was corrected by our CEO that it's people, so that was a fun interaction. But people are definitely the most important. And we believe that people who know the data should be able to ask questions from their data. But we find that with modern BI infrastructure and organizational processes, people aren't always able to do that, whether it's a lack of skills, lack of time, or lack of knowledge of analytical functions. Our mission with Ask Data is to allow every single person the ability to explore their data. And to do this, we have to build great products, not just for the analyst, but for the business user or consumer of that data. With Ask Data, we're lowering the barrier to analytics by allowing more people to ask more questions more easily. Lots of mores. And by doing so, this will drive better engagement with the analytical community, both in your organization and in general. And by doing so, it'll allow the analysts to deliver more analytical richness and allow them to focus on the complex challenges that your businesses are facing. And with all these cylinders firing, the true value of self-service analytics will be realized. Pause for the picture. You're good. We have a small audience today, so this will be super casual. And if you guys just need us to slow down or stop on a slide, we're happy to accommodate, so just let us know. Cool. So before we talk about NLP, I just want to let you know how that fits into the broader vision of smart analytics and all the amazing investments Tableau's making in AI and machine learning. We've already built capabilities in Tableau Server where we're recommending data sources, tables, and joins. We recently also acquired a company called Empirical Systems, which is an AI startup that's spun out of MIT. They're leading our efforts around automated discovery and cool features like anomaly detection and key driver analysis. Imagine if you have some time series data and you see a spike or an anomaly. Being able to click in that and seeing all the probable correlations that's driving that variance is going to be so impactful, and we're really excited about the new features coming with that team. Is there a question?
I think what you just mentioned about identifying the anomalies in the scan, is it available in AskPartner, or it will be available?
Okay, great question. So I'm just talking about all the broader investments that we're making in smart analytics. Natural language is one of them. So I'm talking about single entities. So think about this is the investment in the platform of Tableau, natural language being one of them. And the power of all these things together is what really can drive smart analytics as a platform. Great question. Model automation. Who was at the keynote this morning? What did you guys think about the automatic data modeling in Tableau? How cool is that? And smart data prep. Our vision of data prep is to make that a one-click operation. We've all heard the paradigm that an analyst spends up to 85% of their time cleaning their data and only 15 to 20% of their time analyzing it. With prep, we're flipping that on its head. And with new products like Prep Conductor, we're allowing you to schedule flows and manage the governance of your data preparation pipeline. And then there's natural language. That's where we're going to spend most of the time today. But I just wanted to let you know that natural language is one of many investments that we're making in the ecosystem of smart analytics in Tableau. So, I know we all love slides, but let's get started with a quick demo just to show you how easy it is to get started using Ask Data.
Leave it. Yeah. All right, so sometimes all you really need is just a quick insight. For example, your boss might drop by your desk and ask you, hey, what are the sales figures like from last week? I know our boss is always asking us, how many bug fixes are left before we can ship Ask Data? So you can imagine a situation where you come in to work Monday morning and your boss tells you, hey, we have this contract with a client that's expiring really soon. I'm going to need you to plan an event to wine and dine them so that we can convince them to renew the contract. And please let me know what the plans are by the end of the day today. So it's not a lot of time, and I know I already have a lot of work on my plate, so I just need something quick and simple. So let's see what we can do. Hey, Ruhab, what do we know about this client?
Samantha, this client loves good and expensive wine. So I think a nice winery and wining and dining them might just win them over.
Okay, I can definitely work with that. So yeah, fancy winery, something expensive. Yeah, let's just go down that path and be super quick. So I know I have a data set already available on Tableau Server that's about wines. So I'm already logged into Tableau Server, so let me look up my wines data source. So as soon as I select wines data source, I am now automatically navigated to the new natural language experience. Once I'm on this page, I can immediately see over to the right that there are some sample questions to help me get started with Ask Data. On the left side, I can see that there's a list of dimensions and measures to help me get a sense of what information is in this data set. As I'm scrolling over some of the fields with the Enrich tooltip, now I can see what are some of the values in this dimension or measure. For example, for country, I can see that the most common value is US and France, which makes a lot of sense given that this is a wines data set. So I can see that there's province information, there's winery information, there's even points and price information. So it looks like this data source is probably going to help me solve my problem of finding a winery to bring our clients. So whenever I'm faced with a new data source, typically the first thing I want to know is to get a sense of how big the data source is, just to make sure that this is a sizable and enough information for me to draw some conclusions. So let me go ahead and ask, how many wineries are there? Distinct count of wineries. That sounds like what I'm looking for. So let's go ahead and select that interpretation. So now I can immediately see that there is a delay. So as I'm selecting that interpretation, what's happening behind the scenes is we have a parser logic. What is going on?
The internet here kind of sort of sucks, so bandwidth issue.
totally was working. This is what happens when you're doing a live demo. OK. Let's try this again. I think I actually lost internet connection.
Oh, jeez. All right, great tapping. All right, bear with us, guys. Thank you.
Is internet OK here in the room?
We have one question.
Yeah.
So can this connect only to a Tableau extract, or can it turn to a live connection?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we'll get into some specifics later, but this is available both for extract and live connections, both on Tableau server and online. So essentially, right out of the box, you can start using NLP for all of your published data sources. Yeah?
Is this available in the Tableau desktop as well?
It is not currently available in Tableau desktop. It is in Tableau server and online.
The question was more about it becomes only an extract, or you can connect to a database and still do it as a live connection.
Yeah, sorry, I thought I mentioned that it's available for live and extract. Yeah.
So when can we expect this in Tableau desktop?
That's a great question. So if you think about sort of the target user base for this product, it's really the casual business user and people who either may be new to Tableau or don't have a ton of time to go through the full analytical workflow. And desktop is really meant for power users and our creators. So desktop isn't in the near-term roadmap because for us to reach our target demographic, we're looking at server and online as the first offering. Question? Excuse me? Oh, I love that question. Yes, voice is front and center, and we are absolutely evaluating that in a future release. Timing TBD.
All right, so it looks like we're back. We have now internet. Hopefully it doesn't go down for us again. So my first question was, how many wineries are there? So it looks like there are over 9,000 wineries in this data set, which looks like it's a pretty good set of information for us to go and look for answers. So since we're looking for something fancy to bring our clients, I'm really just interested in something expensive. So let's go ahead and ask, what is the top 10 most expensive winery? Top 10 wineries by most expensive price. So I'm immediately taken to a bar visualization that's already in sorted order, showing me the top 10 most expensive winery. See how quickly it was for me to get to an answer that I need. And of course, the top one being Chateau Petrus, which sounds suspiciously French.
It's totally France.
Okay, so I don't think we have budget to go to France. So let's go ahead and filter this down to something a little bit more local and something really just specific to US. Notice how all I typed in was just US. And the system automatically understands that I'm asking about US in the context of my previous question. So all I need to do is type in US. We also know that different people might refer to US in different ways or ask the question in different ways. So for example, I can also say country United States. So earlier, when I was scrolling over to the dimensions, you can see that the value for country only exists as US. However, our system is smart enough to understand that US means the same as United States. So let me go ahead and select country United States. And now, immediately, I get back the results that I was looking for, which is the top 10 most expensive wineries in the US, with the top one being Yao Ming Winery. Why does that name sound familiar?
Smith, I think Yao Ming's a basketball player, so I'm not sure how much he knows about wine.
Okay, how many people here knows that Yao Ming has a winery? Yeah, we were very surprised.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Excuse me?
It's a pretty expensive one at that.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, they only have one wine. We dug into this data source a little bit more. So as you can see, it was super easy to get started with Ask Data. Everything works out of the box for both live data sources and data extracts, and it's directly integrated into Tableau for Tableau Online and Tableau Server. Notice how quickly it was for me to get to the answer that I need and the data that I'm looking for, simply by asking questions in the way that I speak. That's it. So underneath the hood, this is powered by our smart parsing technology, which understands that different people will ask the same question in many different ways, but will still get you back to the same result. Also under the hood, this experience is powered by our semantic data model, which is automatically enriched. So what does that mean? So with Tableau, we know that each data source is unique. But there are a lot of common terms and common concepts that are global across all data sources. For example, a week always means 7 days. United States is often referred to as US. So a lot of these concepts Tableau already knows about, that you have this capability in Tableau Server, Tableau Desktop today. Ask Data leverages all of the same concepts, and it's automatically enriching the data model underneath the hood. So that means you can ask a lot of these questions using the vocabulary that you're most comfortable with, without having to do a single thing. Tableau also knows a lot about basic statistical functions like average, mean, median, et cetera. We have also added these capabilities into Ask Data, which means you can ask questions about these statistical functions, even if your data source does not contain these calculations. So while we know that, yes?
So is there a way we can configure the global synonym based on industry? Say, for example, insurance or healthcare. So do you have something based on industry, or can the user create?
We have a lot of plans on expanding the capability. That's definitely something that we're definitely talking about, but that won't be available with the first release. However, with the first release, we know that there is a need to define your own synonyms. It's not per industry specific, but you might want to define terms that are specific to your team or organization, right?
It's the next slide.
It's like you're queuing me up. It's perfect. So we have also brought you the ability to define your own synonyms. And if you have, for any reason, a data source with cats, can you please add synonyms like feline, kitty with an H? And as the way that I like to refer to my cat, my fluffy overlord. So, okay, let me show you with a quick example of what that would look like. So we've been using the wines data source, and I generally refer to wineries as wineries. I know Ruhab will most likely use the same data source in a bit, and he generally likes to refer to wineries as vineyards. So I'm going to go ahead and create a synonym to make his experience even more natural to him. So I'm going to scroll over to winery, select that, and then hit Edit Synonyms. And I'm going to go ahead and add the word vineyards. Hit Save. And now, if I were to ask the same question, top 10 most expensive vineyards in US, as you can see, the system immediately understands the word vineyard means the same as winery. So I can select that result, select the interpretation, and immediately I will get back the same result as I did before. Yes?
Can you add synonyms to value? So, for example, if I really wanted to, instead of saying US, do America with starting with an apostrophe, could I do that?
So we have edit aliases today in Tableau. You can't do that with Ask Data, but we should add that to the features list.
Well, that's absolutely something we're
Yes.
considering right now. That's a great question. And America for sure.
Can we, so the synonyms are at data source level, right? Can that be reused? So do you have to go and do this vineyards for every place where you have winery, or can that be automatically done?
So right now it's at the data source level, but the difference is if I added a data source, it doesn't matter who's using it, they will get the same synonym. So it's at the data source level.
It's shared across data sources, but some of the global sharing concepts are something we're still considering.
Cool.
Great questions.
Yes?
The winery is a dimension, dimension name, right? What was the dimension name?
So it was the one I was doing? Yeah, so I went to winery and I edit the synonyms here. You can also do for measures as well. Yeah, not in Ask Data today. If you want to add a synonym for the value itself, we do aliasing in Tableau capabilities. And it's like something that's available today.
Yeah, in the interim, you'd have to do that at the data model level and structure your data and publish it, of course, and then that would be consumed by Ask Data. But right now, synonyms are at the attribute or field level. But value level synonyms are definitely, as we mentioned earlier, so definitely something we're considering. Was that your question?
In case the data source will do the hierarchy, although it's not relevant for the ask and for the NLP, but will you be able to see it on the dimension structure?
Yeah, so was your question around if hierarchies are respected? Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
the hierarchies?
hierarchies.
So right now, actually, I should actually mention that. So under the dimensions and measures, it's actually not a full list of dimensions and measures. That's because we have actually some smart technology in the back end to understand what is the most popular fields in your data source, and we only show you those ones. Otherwise, most data sources will have a ton of dimensions and measures. So those are some of the smart capabilities that we're adding in. Not in the first one. If you use it over time, the system will learn. So let's say if there's a lot of usage on a particular dimension, over time, the system is going to get smarter and realize that this is actually a really popular field, and we'll actually go and start populating that field into Ask Data as well.
So what we find is, conventionally, a data source is going to have a ton of exogenous data, and most times it's just not even leveraged. If you think about the individuals and the business users who might be using this product, more than likely, a lot of those attributes are just going to go unused. So to declutter that experience and kind of build a transparency of what are the most important attributes, we use ranking and popularity as features to help select those attributes.
Yes.
That's a great question. So we also have a global recommendation engine that's shared across Tableau. So we have an understanding of popularity and relevancy at sort of a meta level. And a lot of that is actually used as an input into. That's correct.
Cool. Looks like there's a lot of interest in data modeling. So we're not going to go too in-depth into these topics during this session, but I would definitely recommend you to these two other breakout sessions that will go into these topics into more detail. So semantics and cognition for visual analytics will be actually around semantic and data modeling. And then analytical conversations will be about how we are using a lot of the techniques that we're using to really infer what you mean when there's ambiguity involved, when there's lack of information involved in your question. Cool. So now, getting back to the example before, in my quest to find a winery to bring a client to, I decided that I'm just going to go with something expensive, and all I needed was a quick way to get to the data I'm looking for. So Ask Data is really good when you need that quick insight, when you need that quick question answered. Ask Data also has really powerful analytical capabilities, which means it's really also good for more in-depth data analysis, data exploration, and full analytical workflows. So let's see what that would look like if we were to take a different approach.
Cool. So let's go back into the demo. Okay, so and as Samantha mentioned earlier, she knew exactly what she was looking for. She just wanted to find the most expensive vineyard in the United States. But it's not often that you know exactly what you're looking for. So I'm just going to walk through an entire sort of exploratory workflow to see if we can kind of come up with a good option of which winery to take these clients to. So I'm just going to delete this query real quick. I'm just going to refresh the page. Okay, now we're in a clean state. So I actually just want to explore the data a little bit more before I get to something really specific. So if I want to know just the average prices across all the wines in general, I can do that by simply asking, what's the average price? And immediately we get interpretation back. Ask Data is the fastest way to get a single aggregation in Tableau. Great, so now we know average prices at a global level. Let's break that down by country. There's a lot of different ways you can express a singular intent, meaning if I want to ask for countries, I might say, show me this by country, or by country. There's a lot of different ways to ask the same thing. And our ability to parse this is really robust. I'll show you that you can filter this by country by simply typing in the word country, selecting the interpretation, and we'll automatically get a response. And we've chosen a map because we're talking about regional data. So there's a lot of intelligence built around smart defaulting that we'll speak about later. So in this view, I have a lot of countries, and it's interactive just like a Tableau workbook or Tableau dashboard. And I can see all of the underlying data by hovering over this. That's nothing new. Great. So we can see that we have a lot of global data, but we've already decided that we're sticking to the United States. So again, I'll filter this data down to the US by simply typing in US and picking the right interpretation. By doing so, we now get an aggregated view of the United States, but this still isn't super helpful, and I might want to look at this in a little bit more granular way. I know that I have state data in here, so again, I can simply type in state, and state is a synonym for province, which Samantha added for me earlier, so thank you. And we'll just select that. And we can see the average prices across all of the states in the United States. Just by a few simple questions, I went through a pretty insightful workflow and got to a somewhat interesting insight. Immediately, I can see that the West Coast has some of the highest prices on average, but price isn't always the best indication of goodness. Quality is also another way that we can analyze this. So if I want to see the average quality of the wine, and it looks like we have some data on points, which is just a scale between 0 and 100, we can do that by either asking a new question, or we can refine and edit this existing query really easily by using our refinement experience. You can click into each one of these pills and change the dimensions and measures. You can also change the aggregation really easily. So I'm just going to change this from price to points and hit accept. So now we see the average points for all the states in the US. And again, it looks like the West Coast has the highest average points. So there's sort of a common theme there. I saw the West Coast having the most expensive wines and the most quality wines. So there might be a correlation between those two variables, price and points. So if I want to understand what that relationship looks like, I can do that by asking a new question, like average price by points. And immediately we can see, as the points increase, so does the price on average. And once we get to, let's say, like 98 points, that's an inflection point where price just becomes, kind of unreasonable. So we kind of have a threshold of where we don't want to go past. So let's just go back to the previous view using the undo button. And again, now we're at average points. I'll explore some of the states here in the West Coast, Washington, Oregon, and California. And if I was strictly going by the data, Oregon actually has the highest, points on average. So that might be a good place to explore some vineyards. So let's ask for the top 10 most expensive vineyards in Oregon. And while I'm typing Oregon, you can see that our interpretations are showing you all the fields that contain the value Oregon. So you don't really have to worry about which fields map to which values. We'll automatically detect that for you and rank them by popularity. So I'm actually talking about Oregon as the state. Question? Yeah, that's a great question. So all the fields that are already available in your data source that have that specific value will map that to all the attributes so that you can actually make that determination yourself. Because if I'm talking about Oregon, the system may not know if you're talking about the state or the province or the county. I didn't even know there was a county called Oregon. But I actually meant state. So I have the option of making that decision as a human, but the machine will help educate you about your data through highlighting those interpretations. That's a fantastic question.
Yes.
So, oh, please. Sorry, was the question which platform is this available on, or?
That's a great question. So with the first release of mass data, it's going to be really focused on analytical capabilities. So we're not quite there yet with the colors, but that's definitely something we're working towards, so that you can imagine a future where we can ask questions with regards to data and more of the visual properties of your viz.
Oh, we'll get there. Great question.
Hold on
That's
to
a little
that.
bit later.
And then I think
You
we
guys
have a
are
question in the back as well.
Fortune tellers.
Yes.
Go ahead. So let me just repeat that question to make sure I'm addressing your question. So are you asking how are we able to determine to show a map? Yeah. So we're leveraging a lot of the same capabilities as Show Me, but we've beefed that up a little bit. So understanding the underlying data model and knowing that the data type associated with region is a geographic field, we're able to give you the best default visualizations. And we'll dive into that a little bit more closely later. Go ahead.
Based on the relative rate range?
Yes, we also have some cool examples to show you on that in just a minute. Cool. Guys are just giving away all my secrets. No, I love it. Awesome. Yeah, love the questions. Keep them coming. Okay, so now we have the top 10 most expensive wineries in Oregon. And as you may have seen in the Vision keynote, what does expensive mean? We have a best interpretation of what that might mean, but you can always click into that and, oh, sorry, here, most expensive prices. Oh, that's not working. Okay, forget I said that. Okay, so now we have data on the top 10 most expensive wineries. So if I hover over some of these values, I can see the underlying data. I can see Archery Summit is the most expensive, and so on and so forth. But by looking at the number of records, which is actually the variety of wines in this data set, I can see that Adelsheim actually has the most variety of wine with 23 varieties. So that might be a fun place to explore. Just a lot of options of wine. So if I want to explore all the various types of varieties in Adelsheim, I can ask a question like variety at Adelsheim. Choose interpretation, and immediately we can see a frequency distribution of all the types of wine in this winery. And if I want to see which variety has the most expensive bottle, again, I can use that same refinement experience and change sum of number of records to price, and change the aggregation to maximum. We'll hit accept, and we can see that the Pinot Noir is actually the most expensive variety at this winery. So we just went through an entire analytical workflow with just a few questions and a few clicks, not a single drag and drop. How easy was that, right? Samantha knew exactly what she was looking for, but I really didn't, and I just wanted to explore my data, and I got to a different conclusion, but that's okay. I was exploring the data in a way in which it made sense to me. That's what's great about Ask Data, is giving you the power to explore your data in a conversational and natural way. All right, so let's get back into slide land. Oh, here's. Cool, thanks, Samantha. Yeah. Okay, so we're back in slide view. Let me just reclip this. Awesome, okay, back in action. So a few of you might have been wondering, how are we expressing these questions in terms of analytical capabilities or analytical functions? So let's just geek out a little bit and talk about all the supported analytical functions in Ask Data. There's 5, and they're right there. There's aggregations. So with aggregations, I'm talking about asking for the average or the sum, min, max, distinct count. Typically a single number response is supported. You can also group or partition your data with your dimensions using Ask Data. So asking for something like show me the vineyards by country is a grouping or partitioning function. You can also filter your data, you can limit it, and limits are looking at the top 10, the top 20, the bottom n. You can do that really easily with Ask Data. And lastly, sorting. So obviously you can sort alphabetically, you can sort based on the quantitative values at play, or even sort on the dimensions and measures themselves. Cool. So I mentioned a lot of the smart, intelligent capabilities built into the system. Let's talk about what those are.
Cool. So to go into that question in a little bit more detail, smart visualization selection. Notice how in all the examples that Ruhab and I gave, we never had to specify the viz type. And that's because we have smart logic into this in Ask Data to determine what is the best type of visualization based on both your data set, what we know about your data, as well as the question that you're asking. So in this case, the example here is average points by country. Because you asked about country, and because country is a geo field in your data source, we will automatically give you back a map viz. For those of you who are familiar with the Show Me capabilities in Tableau today, Ask Data is built on top of the same thing. There are some cases where we've actually improved upon Show Me. So earlier, we showed an example where you're asking a question and you get back a single number. Today, if you're familiar with Tableau, you get back one bar, which is not the best visualization, as we learned through feedback. And a lot of people prefer the single number. So those are cases where we've actually made improvements over the existing Show Me capability. So in addition to smart visualization, we have also have some smart logic in there to give you a default sort order. So how many of you have built bar vizzes in Tableau? And how many of you, right after building the bar viz, scrolled over to the top of the viz and clicked that little icon to sort, either in descending or ascending?
First thing,
Yeah.
always, some people do.
We always do that. I don't know why we haven't fixed that in desktop. But we know that when you're in Ask Data, when you're doing a natural language flow, you want to be in the flow. You want to be kept in the flow. It's very distracting when you have to go and actually click on something to put it in a different sort order. Or when you're analyzing data, you want to actually have things that are more organized so you can visually immediately see. So we're really just striving to eliminate as many of these additional steps that you might have to take to keep you in the flow as much as possible. This is probably my favorite feature or non-feature for Ask Data. Our smart parser technology is able to understand you despite any typos. So I'm not a terribly great typist, and I hit this all the time. I don't know if I hit it in the demos today, but this is definitely something that is actually really cool, and most of our team is appreciative when we're doing demos. However, if you have a cat and they're walking on your keyboard, I don't think even our smart parser technology can understand that. All right, so ambiguity resolution. So when we're conversing as humans, there's a lot of ambiguity involved in conversation that we may not notice. So for example, if I know that 2013 is a great year for wine, I'll probably have more question around 2013. So I might ask a question about 2013 wines. So hopefully, you can all understand that I was referring to the year 2013. In other words, vintage 2013 wines. However, to a computer, 2013 is really just a number. It could be referring to a year, could be referring to a price, could even be referring to a number of records. It's really just any numerical value. So a computer would have no idea what you mean. We've actually implemented some smart ranking algorithm to determine what is the most likely thing that you're referring to. And this is also based on past usage as well. So for example, when I'm asking 2013 wines, our system will interpret that as my title with vintage in 2013. And that way, we're inferring what you mean. We'll also, as you can see, we have additional interpretations, just in case that wasn't really the thing that you're looking for. But the most likely response, we're going to try to bubble it up to the top as your top interpretation. Similarly, in human-to-human conversation, there's actually a lot of information that's under-specified. So in this case, the example here is wine prices over time. Well, what does over time mean? Hopefully, if I were to ask you, hey, visualize what that looks like in your mind, wine prices over time. Most likely, you're going to have a line viz with time series on the x-axis, maybe by year, wine prices, unfortunately, increasing, going over to the top right over time. And that's what I mean by it's underspecified, because to a computer, over time doesn't really have a definition. So again, this is where Ask Data is being very smart. We'll try to fill in the information based on what we know about your data and based on what we know about human language to help you get to the answer that you're looking for in the fastest way possible. And advanced concepts. To make the experience feel even more natural, we've added a lot of advanced concepts into Ask Data. So for example, when we're talking about wines, it would be incredibly awkward if I had to ask about, show me the top 10 wines where the price is the maximum or price is greater than a certain amount, right? Like, it's just really awkward to get out. Most of the time when we're talking about wines and prices, you want to ask about most expensive wines or the cheapest wine. You're not going to go into a store and ask for, hey, maximum price. That's very computer speak. So the way that we have made the experience more natural is by introducing these vocabulary into Ask Data itself, so that you can ask questions like, what is the most expensive winery? And that way you're not having to learn the system's language. Similarly, who is the most popular taster? Right? The word popular, to a computer, it may not have any relevant definition, but we have taught the system so that it will try to infer what you mean. Again, the goal here is really to get you to the point where you can ask questions in the most natural way possible, and you do not need to learn how to speak like a computer. So those are some of the cool, yeah, go ahead. What about multilingual support? Email threads from last week.
Yes.
That's a fantastic question.
You must have hacked my emails and seen what I was talking about just earlier today. So, we are just starting out in our journey today. As you heard, we're just announcing Ask Data in beta. And multilingual support is absolutely on the roadmap, and we'll be announcing more about that in the upcoming months.
Just to add a little bit more detail. So with Ask Data, it will actually be available in all localized versions of Tableau, but the system will only interpret English. So if I were to ask top 10 most expensive wineries, if I were to ask that in French, the system will not be able to understand. But if you were to use, actually, I don't know if French
So if your data was modeled in French, you could say top 10 most, insert French word. So in terms of the object and field detection, I actually speak French, so I don't know why I thundered on that. So if your data is modeled in French and will recognize the field and attribute names and values, just the supporting syntactic structure of the sentence would have to be in English. But that's going to get beefed up.
Cool. All right, who would like to see more demos?
No, more slides, Samantha, please.
More demos.
Cool. Okay.
Do you have any questions? One more question? Embedding. So embedding
Just building the dashboard.
Yeah.
So I'll get to it, but essentially the quick summary there is you can save this into a Tableau workbook and create a dashboard from natural language generated visualizations. So it will be very simple to do that. Okay, so we mentioned earlier that Ask Data is available on all published data sources. And just to prove that we're not lying, let's do another demo using a different data source. So here I have, in Tableau Server, another data source about sports, and specifically sports salaries. And admittedly, while I was exploring this, I became very envious that I wasn't a professional athlete. So let's just check out if we can't answer a few questions like, which sport leagues have the highest salaries? Which states produce the most professional athletes? And how does experience factor into my salary? Let's see if we can answer that in Ask Data. And the quick answer is you can, because I've already done this, but let's go through it together. Okay, so one of the first things I always like doing is exploring the shape of my data, just understanding how many values I have and what that structure looks like. So I know I have some regional data. Looks like I have city and country. This is specifically about sports in the United States, and by hovering over league, you can see that it's NHL, MLB, and NBA. Doesn't look like there's any NFL data in this data set, so we can just ignore that for now. And then I have a bunch of measures in here as well. I have experience, looks like the average experience is 5, and I have some salary information in here. Looks like someone is making $32 million as the highest salary.
Rob, I think we're in the wrong profession.
Totally in the wrong profession. Okay, so let's explore some of this data. So one of the first questions I can ask, or I would like to ask, is just how many players are there in this data set? So I can say how many players, and we'll see that that's a distinct count of player. For an average person, you don't really talk like that, and you don't need to. So by choosing this, again, we'll get, this is an aggregation, so we'll get a single number response. Question?
Using the name of the player is the unique ID for the player. So what if you have 2 LeBron James? This will count as 1 or 2?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we will, if there are separate values, because this is a level of detail sort of consideration, so correct me if I'm wrong, but they will be deduped. Because a single record is a player in this instance. Does that make sense? Great question. Anything else? Okay. Cool. So we can see that there's 2,000 professional athletes in this data set. It's a lot. But I saw earlier that someone was making $32 million a year, which is crazy. Let's see if we can figure out who that is. Any guesses? I can ask who makes the most money. And to support this, I actually added some synonyms for who as a player, because that's just, I just want to refer to that more naturally. And added a synonym for money, to salary. And we get back a ton of data. We get all 2,000 back. But let's just filter this down to the top 10 to make it easy to interpret, and hit enter. And immediately we see the top 10 players who make the most money. Alex Rodriguez being number 1. And there's a few other really familiar people on here. There's Kobe Bryant, there's CC Sabathia, but there's a couple of other people on here who I don't really know. And if I want to figure out which league or which sport they belong to, I can simply ask which sport, and we'll nest this data by the league. And immediately I can see that out of the top 10, 80% of the highest grossing players belong to the MLB. In another lifetime, maybe. But there's no one in the NHL. Let's see if we can filter, or let's see if we can explore a little bit more about where these NHL players are. Let's just up top 20 to the top 20 by simply clicking into the word top 10. I can also change this to the bottom 200 or the top 1,000, whatever I want. So I'll just do top 20, hit accept. And again, out of the top 20, there's no one in NHL. Let's explore that a little bit more closely and just see salaries across the leagues themselves. I'll ask a new question of salary. Let's just say the highest salary. Highest salary by sport. And again, we see maximum salary by league. And we'll click on that. We know that $32 million was MLB already. We have some NBA data here, and that's the highest salary. There's $24 million, and then $10 million in the NHL. Let's go back to the previous view, and you might see that the lowest of the MLB players in the top 20 is about 18 million, and then the other one is 17 million, which is likely why no one in the NHL showed up, because the highest salary, at least in this data set, was $10 million. So that may make sense. If I want to see the average salary across these leagues, again, I can ask a new question, or I can use that same refinement experience to edit my query. And to do that, again, I'll just click on the pill, change the aggregation to average, and hit accept. But there was a lot of outliers in this data. There's 32 million, there's 25 million, and we know that the average aggregation can greatly skew towards these outliers. So a median actually might be the best representation for the distribution of this data. So I can, again, easily change that to median. And I'm cycling through this analysis at the speed of thought, without having to worry about changing my view, selecting the right visualization, and inferring the right sorts. All of that's happening sort of magically behind the scenes. Samantha mentioned earlier that we choose the best default visualization, but sometimes you may want a different view that's not represented in the default. You can update the visualization through natural language as well as through point-and-click experiences. So if I want to change this visualization to a tree map, I can simply type that in and say tree map. And immediately I get a new view. You can also use the drop-down in the corner to change that. If I want to go to a text table or a bar chart or back to tree map or do that again, I can easily do that. And the great thing about it is that we'll only show you the viable options in the drop-down. You don't see a scatter plot because there's no, that just doesn't make sense, right? We have dimensions at play. So you don't have to worry about what visualization works for your data. We'll do all that work for you. How cool is that, right? Come on. Okay, so we looked at salary data across the leagues. Let's look at some regional data and see if we can answer the question, which states produce the most professional athletes? So I'll ask a new question. How many players in each state? And immediately I get another default sorted visualization. We see some international data in here, Ontario, Dominican Republic, and others. But I am just for this demo, interested in states within the US. So I'm just going to filter this down to the US, United States. And we can see that California, Texas, and Florida produce the most professional athletes. Pretty cool. We're in Louisiana, so let's just see where Louisiana fits in this whole scheme of things. And you can add any other states or narrow this analysis and filter it down, again, using that same refinement experience by clicking on United States and changing all the values. Or you can use natural language as well. So I can type in Louisiana. I'm getting lazy, so I'll just say Cali, and then I'm getting even lazier, so I'll just type in TX for Texas. All these variants of geography are global semantic concepts that, again, are enriched in the underlying data model. My data model doesn't have Cali in it, doesn't have TX in it, but we're able to infer those intelligently based on our global semantic understanding of geography. So let's filter this down, and we can see that Louisiana has about 23 athletes that they've produced professionally, at least in this data set. And again, if I want to nest this by sport, I can do that so easily by just typing in sport, hitting enter, and now we see for each sport how many players have been produced in each of the states that I've introduced in my filter. It looks like California is sort of leading the charge here in creating professional athletes, and there's no one from Louisiana who's made it to the NHL. It's kind of surprising. If I want to see the salary across these states, so of these states, how are people sort of doing salary-wise? Again, I can do that by using the refinement experience, by changing distinct count of player, change that to the salary measure, and I'll choose maximum as the aggregation. And it was that simple. Cool. So I think we've kind of answered the question about which states produce the most professional athletes. We can see it's obviously California across all the leagues. Now let's look at how experience may impact my salary. I have a measure here for experience. It's abbreviated as EXP here. So let's look at the average salary by experience. And we can see that we get this line graph back, because experience is being interpreted as sort of a time series. And it's apparent that the first 6 or 8 years are kind of the most impactful in terms of my salary. If I want to see this view by sport, again, I can do that really easily by just typing in sport and bringing that into my analysis. Now we can see this split by each sport in the line graph. We have this crazy sort of spike here, this outlier. It's in Major League Baseball, which is 32 million, and we know that's Alex Rodriguez. And just like with outliers, you can employ your own sort of strategy to deal with them. In this case, let's just exclude it. So I'll just click on that and exclude it, and we get a better distribution in our data. So again, it looks like the first 6 or 8 years are kind of the most impactful in terms of salary. So let's filter this down to just the first 8 years. So I can say between 0 and 8 years. Whoops, sorry, I think I put the wrong interpretation. Let's do that again, between 0 and 8 years. Cool, okay. So now we've worked this data down to the time of interest, which is the first 8 years. And immediately I can see that if I was just starting out, the NBA actually has the highest average salary for a new professional athlete, which is kind of cool. But it's all increasing. I can update the time duration by using the same refinement experience by choosing 8, and I can up that to 15 if I'd like. And you can see, okay, after that it just gets kind of crazy. Maybe it doesn't matter. After 8 years, your salary will likely normalize. So we just went through an entire analytical workflow just by asking questions. Again, it was so easy. I didn't really know anything about the data. Just asked a couple questions, explored it, had fun. and reach some pretty powerful insights. It's so simple to use Ask Data. You don't really need to know anything about Tableau in general, anything about having to slice your data, just however you want to express your data naturally, you can do that. And now you have a way to get to those insights through Tableau. Cool. Let's go back to slide mode.
Actually, we have a question. So.
Oh, what's the question?
Yeah,
Please.
Is there any way to like revisit your past questions?
Oh, that's a great question. So we have like this undo and redo functionality where you can kind of just go back and forth. But with question history, if you go to our TC Labs activity, we're actually prototyping our new conversational analytical experience, which actually takes into consideration your entire history of utterances and maintains that state and context. So you can ask follow-up questions or explore some of the other questions you've asked. So not visible in this view, but I definitely would encourage you to go check out the prototype in TC Labs.
yes. Can you check the?
Sorry, what was that question?
Oh, changing the dates.
Yeah.
Not in the first version. Yeah.
So let's start back there. I'll get to you in just a second, and then you as well.
Does it know any like super simple calculations? I don't know, quantity times price.
Can you please sign up for TC?
You guys have like the best questions ever, seriously. No, that is so relevant. So there's sort of two aspects to that. If you have predefined calculations in your data source, you can leverage that immediately in Ask Data. However, if you go back to TC Labs, we have another prototype where you can generate calculations on the fly using natural language. So if that isn't modeled into your data or you don't have the calculations built, you can ask for year-over-year growth. What's the percentage of blah? Creating those calculations using natural language without ever having to create a calculation. Go check it out in TC Labs. We'd love your feedback on it. Is there a question over here?
That was actually my question.
Oh, great, yeah.
TC Labs.
Save to the data source, like you typed it down.
Sorry,
When you create a calculated field, it's saved, and then the next time you use that data source, it's there.
We're exploring some options right now. That's why we're actually leveraging TC Labs just to get more feedback. Right now, we're trying to get a better sense of what types of questions you would like to ask that would require calculation. And then we can figure out whether we should do it during real time or we'll need to persist that information somewhere.
I'm sorry, did I get to your question?
Not yet. In terms of, I know there were questions asked about dashboards. There's no way, like, once you were presenting a dashboard, like, within it, if someone else wanted to see a different view, like, show me this instead by this, that's not embedded in a dashboard.
You're asking all the right product questions. So, you know, I'll talk in sort of product management-y terms. What you're seeing right now is what we call our MVP, our minimum viable product. And we're absolutely getting to more ubiquity across Tableau. Samantha, earmuffs, but my vision is that it's really available at the moment in time when you have the question, whether that's in a dashboard, through a data source, potentially even search. A lot of really cool things that we're exploring, including being able to ask that directly from the dashboard. That's definitely top of mind for us.
However, with the first release, you will be able to save it out to a workbook. And then at that point, you can share it out similar to how Tableau Server and Tableau Online works today.
Did I see a hand over here? Please.
I like talking to Siri. Any idea of voice capture recognition?
So I'll speak to it more from a technology perspective. So for the first release, we're really focusing on getting the parser technology correct. And then switching over from voice to text is actually it's a very solved problem in the industry. So that's definitely a direction that we're moving towards, right? We really envision the salesperson on the road scenario where they want to talk to their mobile machine, whatever it is, iPad or iPhone, and then ask, hey, how are sales figures? So that is definitely something that we're working towards.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing with voice is that you have to get the experience right. And typically what we find is aggregation and single number responses work really well in a voice command. But if you're asking a very ambiguous question that may have a lot of responses, like getting the experience right is definitely crucial.
Cool.
Is it going to come to the mobile side?
Yeah, soon. And the
Coming
future.
soon to a theater near you.
Yeah, so sorry that I'm saying like, soon, a lot, upcoming X. So there's a lot we want to do, and we're just getting started, and we're so excited about all the awesome capabilities that are in the pipeline. Okay, so we're hitting right at the 5 o'clock hour, so we're gonna cycle through a couple of best practices.
Yeah.
But Samantha and I will be hanging around after the presentation as well. So if you need to leave, totally understand, but we'll get through the rest of the material kind of quickly.
So a few quick tips on how to get the most out of the natural language experience. Please keep in mind that these are just generally good tips and advice that we recommend when you're working with Tableau. This is not specific to Ask Data. So the first is really anticipating the types of questions that people might have of your data. So especially important for if you're data publishers to understand, hey, like what questions people might ask so that you know how you need to shape the data, any joins that you need to create, or calculated fields. So for example, if you have a profit and a sales information in your data source, but you're expecting your business users or your exec team to ask about profit margin or profit ratio, then it's going to make their experience a lot better if you create these calculated fields so that to enable them to ask questions about these fields. So simplifying data source, a lot of data sources typically has a lot of information that may not be relevant or useful, especially when you're asking questions. So we definitely recommend just removing as much data as possible from your data source. And of course, using data extracts will just greatly improve your performance across the board whenever you're with Tableau. And if we go into one level deeper at the field level, we definitely recommend using unique and meaningful names and then leveraging add synonyms to really add more context into the data source. One particular field that we're really recommending to add a synonym for is number of records. That appears in all data sources, but oftentimes it's not immediately clear what number of records is referring to. So now you can easily add a synonym, and that will enable people to ask a lot more natural questions.
So as you heard today, Ask Data is available in the 2019.1 beta that's available like now. So I saw a few phones out. I'm sure you're texting your mom, where can I get Ask Data? It's in the beta today. You can tell her to
just go.
Just go.
Download.
It's available both in Tableau Server and online. As I mentioned, it works on all of your published data sources. There's no setup required. It's so simple. It's available for creators, explorers, and interactors right out of the box. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of other activities happening around Ask Data. The 2 sessions in TC Labs where you can interact with our conversational analytical prototype, as well as the ability to create calculations. If you need to see more demos, we also have a booth set up in the kiosk where you can run through the Superstore data set and see some additional examples. And there's some more advanced talks, getting deeper into the semantic modeling capabilities and how that's being built around our visual analytics. And then again, there's another one on analytical conversations and smart inferencing. So highly recommend checking out those talks. So Ask Data is really easy to use. It has powerful analytical capabilities and is smart. There's so much intelligence happening just to reduce the cognitive load from you and make your experiences just that much more delightful. So please, after, I know everyone's busy, just take a second to complete the survey. It validates for our boss that we're actually here, not on Bourbon Street, so that's helpful. And it just allows us to get better. So the next time around, it's even more relevant and awesome. And I don't think you QR code here. So we would love to partner with all of you in our upcoming user research. The NLP team loves to fail early and fail fast and validate prototypes really early in the design process. We do usability and user research all the time. So if you want to help us and sign up for user research, please come see me after the session. I'll take information down and we'll certainly reach out and get your feedback on future prototypes. So thank you. I may regret this later, but here's my contact information. If you have any questions, please reach out. I love speaking and hearing from our customers to understand your use cases, seeing how you're leveraging Ask Data. And if you want to partner and your department company wants to really kind of engage with the product and engineering team, we would love to make that happen. So again, thank you so much. We hope you love Ask Data. Samantha and I will stick around for a little bit and answer any questions and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yeah, enjoy.